Good morning, everyone, or I guess good afternoon. Um, I'm coming to you from Davis. I moved our dogs down away from the wildfires last night. So the broadcast area is going to look a little differently, but that shouldn't affect much, I hope. If anyone has trouble hearing me, please let me know. I have checked the audio and it appears to be working, but I know last week or 2 weeks ago we were missing audio for a while. So if you can hear me well, I'd love a thumbs up or a quick comment just to let me know that I have set everything up. I moved all my stuff down here to Davis to make sure you can hear me. All right. Today we are talking about using a carrier, anything you can put a dog into that you might carry. So it could be a hiking pack, a crate. Last week, we talked about how to train the dog to go into something like that on their own, so you don't have to force or stuff them in. Um, but you can't stop there, or it's not a great idea to stop there because if you've done all this painstaking training to get your dog to, say, walk into their crate or climb into their carrier on their own, and you're like, oh, great, ready to use it. And then you pick it up and start using it, you may find the dog a little less willing to climb in next time you ask them to, because a dog being picked up and kind of jostled and carried around can be pretty unpleasant for them. So we need to introduce it in steps. All right. So, and remember, as I go through the slides in the video, if you have any questions, if you put it below wherever you're watching the video, they'll come up for me. All right. So training a dog to be lifted and carried in a pack, crate, etc. So this is for anyone who wants to carry a dog in a hiking pack, in a travel carrier, even in a travel crate. This could be, going to the vet or taking a trip, on a plane or road trip, something like that. And just kind of the big picture overview of what I'll show you is one, I'll talk about introducing movement slowly. We're going to first, I'll just show you a few clips, examples of kind of getting the dog used to that jostling, a little moving around of the carrier or the crate without lifting it first. And then we'll add lifting and then carrying. And I would recommend doing a little bit of lifting work before you start moving around and actually carrying the crate or pack anywhere. And then I'll talk a little bit about the details we needed to think about with Pancake that needed to be incorporated into his training, things that we needed for the scenario in which we plan to use this pack in real life. Okay, so what are we really doing when we're doing this training? Well, the big picture steps here are, well, what's here under the bullet points are the sort of challenges or distractions that we're going to include in the training. But what we're reinforcing, we're going to be using food in the examples here. And what I'm trying to reinforce is Pancake staying in the pack. So not trying to get out. And also, I'm keeping an eye on his body language. And, I want him to be relaxed, but the behavior, the kind of gross behavior, big picture behavior I'm looking for is just stay put in the carrier. So I'm going to introduce some small movement or jostling of the pack first with him in it, then just little lifts and then bigger lifts, lifting all the way up and then starting to carry it. So some things to keep in mind as you start to work with moving that pack or carrier around with your dog in it is that even if you're really careful, it's hard to avoid having uneven or unpredictable movements happen while you're, even just picking the thing up from the ground. It's hard to keep it completely, even with the ground or parallel. And then if you're putting like a pack on your back or your front, like I am, there's a lot of kind of sideways jostling. So we'll start with slight shifts in different directions, knowing that that's something that your dog is going to have to be used to if you're carrying them. As I said, we're reinforcing staying in the pack, not trying to climb out. And we are going to try to avoid startling the dog. So, whatever that looks like for your dog, that'll be your sign to back off. If you've got a dog who's trying to climb out, showing fearful body language, etc. All right, so here's little Pancake, who you watched last week learn how to climb into this pack on his own. And we're just sitting at home. We're still doing this training in the house where he's used to it. And I'm just doing these little kind of rocking the pack a little bit and then giving him a treat for staying put in there. And he doesn't look particularly worried to me. He's focused on the food mostly. So those are just a few examples of introducing that first bit of movement, deliberately kind of moving the thing around a little bit. Now, of course, you're going to have to lift it up if you're going to carry it. And how can we break down lifting up a pack or lifting up a crate? What you could do if you're working on this with your dog is start with the tiniest lifts or even partial lifts of the pack or crate. Make sure they're short in duration, so don't lift it up and keep them up for a long time. Do your best to move slowly and gently. There's always going to be some kind of tipping sideways and stuff, but just minimize it as much as you can in early training. And it helps to have the treats going to your dog frequently, especially early on. So these are things you can do to make it easier. So here's Pancake. I do a little lift, and that little paw up was a sign to me that he wasn't totally sure about this. Another small lift. That wasn't even a full lift. Part of the bottom of the pack was still on the ground. So each time I do these really short lifts, if he did that kind of putting his front paw up, like maybe he was thinking about climbing out, then the next rep or two, I would back off, maybe not do a lift at all, just put my hands on and jostle the pack again a little bit, do a partial lift, something like that. Once he was pretty consistently just hanging out, staying put for those little tiny lifts, then we're going to add something a little bigger. So there, I just lifted it enough to move it, a foot or something. And actually, during this exercise, I've been sprinkling treats in the bottom of the pack, which he seemed to enjoy and was fine just eating them while I was doing these little short lifts. Now here I'm putting the straps around my arms like I need to actually carry it. And you see I'm popping treats in his mouth pretty frequently. This is going to be one of the first bigger lifts, and I'm going to balance it on my knee, give him a few treats. I'm going to put it right back down. I apologize if you can hear Pancake snoring in the background. He's right next to my desk. And so something I'm looking for here, by the way, this was one of those bigger lifts. So I lifted him just up onto my knee. I was giving him treats. I put him back down. If he had sort of ejected from the carrier as soon as it was on the ground, I would know that would be one big sign that was pretty scary for him. And so when instead he just stays seated in the carrier when I put it down and looks at me or looks at my hand for treats, that to me is a good sign that his top priority is not getting out of the carrier. All right. Does anyone have questions about introducing those first movements or lifting? If you do, pop it into the comments under where you're watching the video. I'm going to start talking a little bit about carrying, so actually moving the thing, moving with the carrier. Aspects to think about as you do this training, ways to make it easier in the beginning are keep your movement really slow and as smooth as you can. Once you, have the pack on you or have the crate in your hand, whatever you're using for this. Keep the duration short. Start at home, and again, do frequent treats. I mean, presuming they're doing the behavior you want. So here, sorry for the clutter, I'm just walking across the family room, just a few steps at a time, moving slowly, much more slowly than I will when I'm hiking, and giving him treats quite often. He's looking for treats, which is good. rather than trying to jump out. So there was a full carry across the room, and he still seemed to do okay. Um, Once you have some decent duration of carrying in the house, so your dog is comfortable, not trying to get out of the pack, then you can start using it in places where you actually would want to use the pack or the crate. This, I think, was one of Pancake's first, maybe his first trip outside of the house in the pack. So I apologize for the camera work. It's Pancake eye view here. We just walked a tiny bit up the street. Now here he looked a little nervous to me. His face was tense. So I turned right around and took him back. And then the next outing we did was even shorter than that. As soon as appeared comfortable, he was never trying to actually get out of the carrier, but I was watching his body language, and as soon as these short trips just up the street appeared to not bother him at all. His body was relaxed. He was just looking around, sniffing the air. We went up to the woods, which is where we were going to primarily be using this carrier, still moving slowly in the beginning. And as you can see, he was relatively relaxed pretty quickly with this. But we did quite a few very short trips up to the woods in the beginning. All right. The last thing I wanted to talk to you about are think about what other details you need to have in place for whatever carrier or crate you're trying to train. So for example, with Pancake, I knew that I wanted to be able to hike with him in the pack when I had my other two dogs with me and sometimes my husband. So other dogs or people were going to be nearby. While I started the training with the carrier on my front so I could see him and see his face, I knew that eventually I wanted to carry the pack on my back. Because he's about 15 pounds, and for much distance, having that pack on my front started to make my lower back hurt. So I knew I needed to make that switch. And the whole purpose of this pack, at least initially, was that I wanted to be able to take Pancake on hikes with our big dogs. But I didn't want to have to only do really short hikes all the time. Our large dogs would like to go for at least an hour or two if they can. And Pancake, being smaller and only having 3 legs, tires much more quickly. So I needed him to be comfortable getting in and out of the pack out on the trail as well. So other loading and unloading locations. So if you're using a crate, for instance, to go to the vet, that's something to think about. Can I load my dog in and out of the crate at the vet? All right, so here's one of our first hikes with the other dogs and my husband. I have him on my front here. So just moving slowly, letting him look around. He was getting treats, every several seconds. I switched him to my back after we had done at least a dozen short hikes with him on my front, on my chest. And I at first just did really short little durations on the back, but I could see him if I used my phone camera, I could see his face and see, that he looked relaxed. So here he is. This was not his first time now. You see I'm moving more quickly now. Dogs are with us. And then we also made sure to do practice deliberately in and out of the pack outside on the trail. So this is just an example. I just shot this pretty recently, but we used the exact same loading up technique that I taught him in the house. Unzip one side, I put it on the ground, pat the carrier, and then he gets treats once he gets in there. So this is something not to take for granted. If you put in a lot of work into getting your dog to load up into a crate or carrier at home, it might be really a lot harder for them to do that anywhere else at first. So it is something you have to deliberately work to generalize to other locations. All right. So just as a reminder, here's the link for our free Facebook support group, facebook.com/group/dogkindsupport. And you can always come there and ask questions. Those of you looking for more one-on-one support, or more consistent support, we do have our monthly training membership, which I have linked in the post that sort of let you know this video is coming, and I'll see if I can edit this post in Facebook later. It's also on under the YouTube video, the link to read about the membership. All right. Any questions about training your dog to ride in a carrier or a crate? I know these steps might seem a little slow, painstaking, and some of you, maybe a lot of you, won't have to be quite this conservative. You may be able to take bigger steps, bigger jumps forward. But most of the time, if you have to guess whether to take a big or a small step, if you've got a sensitive or fearful dog, probably it'll pay off to take the smaller step. If it's too easy, you can just fly through it and move on. But if you take a big jump and it's too hard, sometimes you've really set yourself back quite a ways. All right, everybody. I don't see any questions. If you're watching this as a recording later, if you post a question under it, I'll get it and I'll respond as soon as I can. All right. Next week, I have not determined our topic yet. It might be a good time to talk about these questions that the discussions we've been having sometimes in the support group about rehoming versus training versus euthanasia when you have a dog with severe behavior problems. So I may put something together about that for next week. But if there's anything you'd like to hear about that we haven't covered yet, please feel free to either comment below this video or you can email us at admin@dogkindtraining.com. We always love to hear your suggestions. All right, everyone, have a wonderful week. I will see you next week.